最近几年，我们一直都听到一句话：全球化的时代要结束了。但到底怎么结束？是因为世界变得更分裂了，还是因为美国和中国正在把全球供应链拆成两半？就在最新的一次美中高层交锋之后，美国媒体用了一个很有意思的词，叫做权力对峙。双方表面上说合作，但连美国电视台的主持人都说了，别搞错了各位，这不是合作，这是对峙。而这次美国国内的讨论重点已经非常清楚，这不再是贸易战，不是关税战，也不是科技战，而是供应链冷战。谁控制 AI， 谁掌握稀土，谁拥有先进制造业，谁能把关键产业拉回自己阵营，这些问题正在决定未来几十年世界的走向。在美国媒体的讨论里，你会听到非常强烈的声音。美国觉得过去50年对中国的信任是战略错误，他们要重新打造供应链，重新武装经济，重新建立可信任的伙伴体系。而在这段访谈视频里，美国几位重量级评论员的观点更是直来直去，他们直接说，中国的目标是全球主导，美国现在才真正开始反击，未来20年的胜负就看 AI 和供应链。今天给大家带来的是奥利弗的一段采访内容。话不多说，我们一起来看一下美国的一些内参高层们，他们是怎么看待目前的一个中美关系，以及未来的中美关系将要如何发展的。
The president heads to Mar-a-Lago today after wrapping up a It was billed as cooperation, but make no mistake, folks, this was a power face-off. America walked away with a few short-term wins, but as we have learned before, China's promises are only as good as their enforcement. So trust, but verify. Welcome to the Big Money Show. I'm Jackie DeAngelis, along with my co-hosts Gary Kaltbaum, Kevin O'Leary, Brian Brenberg, and with us for the hour, Fox News contributor DeRoy Murdoch. So remember when globalism was going to bring everyone together? Well, the new reality is that it's actually split right down the middle. It's made America and made by China. And the winner won't be decided by diplomats. It's going to be decided by supply chains. China's rare earth dominance and AI ambitions are still the biggest threat to U.S. supply chains. And the U.S. is rearming economically to rebuild what decades of globalization hollowed out. Even Goldman Sachs says it's time for a course correction. Listen to CEO David Solomon with Liz Klayman.
There are a bunch of things strategically and from a national security perspective that are very important to the United States, and we have to make sure that our relationship with the Chinese around those is clear and appropriate, and it hasn't always been. And so, the policy of the last 50 years, let's just participate and it will all be fine, that's been a mistake. And, I think what the administration's doing to try to get clarity on a bunch of these things, I think, is important.
Washington is bracing for a long economic and geopolitical fight, one that could define the next century. And there is a lot at stake here. Kevin O'Leary, I want to come to you first on this. President Trump has made some progress here, certainly with a framework for a deal, some timelines that buy America some time to diversify some of the supply chains and partnerships that we have abroad. But again, enforcement is key. I think it'll be different this time with the president because he's got this tariff tool belt that he's not afraid to is that, but still, they look you in the eye and they lie straight to your face. We've seen China do this before.
Since 2000, since they joined the WTO, they have not abided by once of the governance of it at all. This is a long history, IP theft, all of it. But I am really happy we're finally discussing this as adults. We now understand the intention of the Chinese, world dominance in terms of their economy and militarily. And so why don't we just put that on the table and start talking about it? So everything we do now should be on the basis of the next 20 years, who's going to win this fight? First of all, right off the table, whoever has the best AI wins all the wars because they're going to be done robotically and from satellites and missile controls from space and all the rest of that. AI is number one. Number two, supply chain. Obviously, the Chinese did a fantastic job as a chess game over the last 20 years, making sure that we have nothing that we need now. They actually bought these assets, some out of the United States, and took them out of here and moved them ashore, or off our shores anyways. And so I think of it as saying, okay, now that we know what their intentions are, let's treat them with respect. But let's make sure we win. And so I'll tell you what the derivative of this is going to be, and I'm telling you right now what's going to happen. Because we're going to have to defend the north of this continent, before this end game is over, we will combine the Canadian and the American economy, not through sovereign rights, but access to all the raw materials Canada has. Some kind of economic deal. It won't be any tariffs on it, I can tell you that, so that we can take 5, 6, 7% of GDP and arm the North and tell the Chinese, don't mess with us. That's where we're going, and it's going to happen much faster than you think.
And you bring up an interesting point, because we've been discussing this as a theme pretty much all week, which is, why did the president do it this way, DeRoy? Everybody said, if China was your big opponent, why'd you go after the rest of the world with tariffs too, including Canada? But I think this is sort of part of the way that he negotiates, working with allies against China. He did that in Asia when he went and met with all the leaders there and formed some strategic alliances. He's got a long game that he's playing, and I think he's doing it pretty successfully. To Kevin's point regarding the chess game that's been played over the last couple of decades, you've got a different head behind the seat here.
Certainly. I agree that this will be a lot of competition economically between the United States and China. I'm skeptical about the idea of this being ending up in a sort of two superpower world like we had in the Cold War, with America leading the free world and the Soviet Union leading the communist world. There was a very strong ideological component to that, which was belief in Marxism-Leninism, and that people were philosophically tied into this. The only people who believe in Marxism-Leninism anymore are pretty much the Chinese Communist Party, Cuba, Venezuela, and the Zoran Mamdani for mayor campaign. That's about it. So I think what you'll find economic cooperation between the two, and nations will be drawn to other countries like the United States, which are strong, which are prosperous, which can protect them. And we've seen this in the Middle East with just a few weeks ago, President Trump going in and to Egypt and having the Middle Easterners essentially witness the Israel-Hamas agreement. We saw it obviously this week in Asia. We saw it over the summer in Europe, where he went to NATO and had the NATO countries increase their commitment to the transatlantic alliance. So I think the competition will go on, but I don't think it's going to be a bipolar.
Can I push back on just one part of that, though? I don't think China's trying to win they're not trying to win minds and hearts through Marxism anymore. They're going around the world and they're just using currency and they're using economic power and saying, you don't have to be Marxist, but we'd like to own all your energy infrastructure. You don't have to be Marxist, but we're going to buy your port. You don't have to be Marxist, but we're going to own all your farmland and agriculture. And that's how they're getting swayed. That's what they're doing in Latin America. Yeah. That's what they've done in Africa. So what I like is you've got a president now who's pushing back on that. He's going to the Middle East and saying, let's do deals on AI and energy. He's going to Asia, let's do deals on nuclear and rare earths. He's going to Latin America and saying, you're done owning our ports here. We're going to own the ports. We're going to help you if you're Argentina and Malay. We're going to crack down on you if you're Venezuela and Maduro. That's how you play against what the Chinese are doing.
So rather than Belt and Road, it's sort of big, beautiful Belt and Road.
We better get cracking. That's all I can tell you. Larry Kudlow said something yesterday as I was watching the tube. He said, well, we had a deal. We came to a happy place on fentanyl 7 years ago. And what did China do? Not a darn thing. That's number one. Number two, I was in Athens, Greece, a bunch of years ago, and I'm at the port. China owns a bunch of the port. And I decided to go online and looked up Belt and Road. China is everywhere, owning tons in partnerships or by themselves. We got to stop worrying. We need to worry about them, but we got to get cracking. Why? Because they're going to continue to use rare earth every time something bubbles up. We got to start getting on top of that. Why? Go look up, go search. What does rare earth materials go into? Oh, just everything. And if we don't get going, we're going to get blackmailed, by China, because they don't really care. They have big self-interest. They've shown it time and time again throughout the years, even though we need them, they need us. But again, they don't care. And by the way, when you saw them together, did you see his face?
Yeah.
He was just dead serious.
Yeah,
he
stone
wasn't
faced.
joking around. He was.
But you bring up something that is really important, and I think it's this idea that the president is taking on something that nobody else has done before. Brian's talked about completely decoupling. It's easier said than done. I think he's trying to at least walk it back as much as he can. No other U.S. president has had the strength, the confidence, the courage this way. At least he is trying. And that also, what you're talking about being on our heels and America getting cracking, that's the other thing the president's doing, because the last 4 years, 8 years under Obama, and we can even go back further than that, we did nothing. And that is costing America now. We have to pay for it, and we've got to play catch up fast.
I think the key is consequences. And the only way you get to squeeze Chinese heads is you have to have the largest economy and the largest army and the best AI. They respect strength. The stick is what they understand. Because they don't care about spreading communism. They care about spreading their access to everything else around the world that they want. I love it. I'm so happy that everybody's waking up saying, whoa, these Chinese dudes are nasty.
Yeah.
And they are.
Yeah.
They're nasty, but they understand they have to have access to the world's largest consumer market, or those people in those factories will riot like Frankenstein on the castle in the Hollywood theme. And that's the only way the big guy gets to keep his jobs. They have to have lunch. They got to be able to eat. He has to keep them employed. They got to sell stuff to us. While we have that leverage, squeeze them. Let's squeeze now.
I just have to one thing. President Trump is gone in 3 years.
Yeah, that's true.
It's going to be incumbent on the next and the next and the next to continue down this road, because if you stop and you don't get cracking, guess who's taken over?
Well,
it is vital to our economic health going forward with these materials and everything else. And it's good to see we're taking steps that way, but we got to get going.
I mean, if the next is AOC, we're certainly going to have a problem. But if the next is J.D. Vance, I imagine he'll crack a pretty hard whip, Brian.
Well, and also the president is setting an example. You talk about consequences, right? We're having this big debate about drug boats in the Caribbean that we're going after. When you go bomb a drug boat in your own hemisphere because the Chinese are trying to kill you through Latin America and Mexico, is that
he does.
There's no other president in our lifetimes who's going to come up, and if they go back to the open borders, everyone in America is going to remember we had a president who killed people who were trying to kill Americans. That memory does not fade fast. That's how you tell somebody around the globe that we mean business. We're not just here to roll over.
Final word.
Yeah, I agree that rare earths, we've got to get on top of that and break our dependence on China for that. Another huge aspect of that is medical precursors, antibiotics, and a lot of our medicines come make life miserable for Americans. I'd say, guess what? No antibiotics for 6 months. See how that works out.
Wow.
So we got to bring that stuff back here, or at least get it into friendly countries and not controlled by China.
That was Larry's big point.
Yeah, that is the threat. And I think by trying to incentivize pharma to bring manufacturing back over here, the president is sort of looking at this categorically and saying, Brian, to your point, let's decouple, but let's do it piece by piece and back away as much as we can, because we can't kind of set off a bomb right now.
There's been a move afoot. A lot of companies have moved to Taiwan, Vietnam, away from China, but need to see more and more and more.
Absolutely. All right, let's pivot here. Take a look at shares of Amazon. One of the big movers in the market today, surging to a high after reporting blowout earnings. The AI boom helped the company's cloud growth, seeing sales increase by 20% to $33 billion. But competition is tough. Google is reporting big growth of its own in the cloud unit as well, while Microsoft says Azure revenue is up almost 40% from last year. So this is a competitive space. So far, so good for all the big players. But they are fighting for a piece of this pie, Gary.
I have to tell you, I am so amazed that these companies, I remember when the first one hit $1 trillion, I said, no, it's not going further than that. We're at $5 trillion. These are just magnificent category killer companies that are doing things right and are not, sometimes you sit back and you rest on your laurels. They're paranoid. They're making sure that going forward they continue this route, and there's just quite the few, and I think there's going to be more going forward.
看完这段访谈，我们可以清楚地感受到，美国的对华认知已经完全升级了。以前他们会讲人权、讲市场准入、讲贸易规则，现在这些都不重要了。唯一重要的是，美国觉得中国是战略竞争对手，而不是合作伙伴。而且他们已经开始系统性的做3件事情。 第一个，美国正在经济重武装。访谈里提到的几个关键点非常狠：谁赢得 AI， 谁赢未来所有战争。供应链是新的国家安全，要把关键产业从中国拉回美国或盟友。稀土被中国卡脖子，美国必须重构供应链。美国已经完全不掩饰了，他们要花钱、花政策、花关税，把制造业给抢回来。这不是短期政策，而是未来几十年的方向。中美竞争不是冷战，但比冷战更现实。访谈中提到，现在不是苏联那种意识形态对抗，因为中国不想输出共产主义，他想输出经济控制权。这句话非常重要。中国在非洲、拉美、中东的模式是不干涉你的制度，不要求你学习共产主义，但我要投资港口、电力、矿产、农业，最后你经济命脉在我手里。美国当然不能接受，这不是冷战，而是全球资源与供应链的争夺战。第三点就是所谓供应链冷战，核心就是一句话：谁能承受与对方脱钩？访谈里提到一个非常关键的点：中国需要美国的消费市场，美国需要中国的制造能力，这让中美必须斗而不破。因为一旦真正脱钩，两国的社会成本、民生成本都会暴涨。所以未来是这样一种状态：科技脱钩，像 AI、芯片、高端制造，供应链分区，有案外包。我们不直接贸易了，我们把厂可能搬到越南、新加坡、墨西哥，直接从那边给美国做输出。经济部分拆分，能源、稀土以及关键材料，但消费品继续互相依存。这就是现实版的有限竞争时代。美国讨论的重点不是中国强不强，而是美国还能不能赢。访谈里最重要的一句话是奥里利说的：现在所有的政策都要围绕一个问题，未来20年谁会赢？这句话直接点破一切。美国的焦虑不来自中国崛起，而来自于他们不确定自己是否还能主宰这个世界。这就是为什么美国要重建制造业，要重组盟友关系，要抢 AI， 要布局稀土，要堵中国的产业链上行，要限制关键技术出口，要把港口、能源、航运从中国手里夺回来。这不是特朗普一个人的事。访谈里都讲了，未来任何总统都必须延续这条路线，因为美国跨党派共识已经形成，中国就是长期的竞争对手。对世界来说，中美竞争不是选边问题，是生存方式问题。访谈最后谈到了一个很现实的点：医疗原料在中国，稀土在中国，光伏在中国，电子供应链在中国。如果中国哪天真的对美国说抗生素半年不给你了，美国社会会直接陷入危机。所以美国现在疯狂推动医疗供应链回流，稀土在本土开采，关键材料签盟友国家，在加拿大、澳洲建立替代体系。美国不是在制裁中国，而是为了给自己续命。但是说实话，即便把这些产业放在美国的这些盟友国家，或者放在美国的本土，第一个是他们的一个劳动力的成本是非常高的，他们生产出来的产品要比中国生产出来的产品贵的非常多，这一点是可以想象到的。而这就会形成一个什么局面，就是中国生产的这些廉价的东西会通过各种各样的途径运到美国，而导致美国本土企业以及他盟友的那些本土企业生产的这些产品无法和中国的商品进行竞争，最终会导致他们建立起来的这些产业链的企业因为竞争不过我们这边的企业而破产，这是很有可能发生的事情。今天这段访谈其实透露了3个核心的趋势。趋势1，全球化不是结束，而是阵营化。未来世界不是一个供应链，而是2个供应链。国家不是选立场，而是选生活方式。趋势2， AI 加资源加制造业等于未来霸权。这个三角谁赢了谁就赢。趋势三，竞争会长期存在，但不会走向全面冲突，因为中美彼此都承担不起真正脱钩。所以未来的世界会是一个合作与对抗共存，竞争与互依共存，产业链成为新武器的时代，供应链成为新武器的时代。希望这期视频能够帮大家把美国的内部认知看得更清楚，也能看懂未来大国博弈的底层逻辑。我认为中美未来的关系是既竞争又合作的关系，它绝对不会像冷战时期的美国和苏联那样是一个意识形态的竞争，而中美未来就是一个主导权的一个竞争，不是你死我亡的竞争。这一点大家要有一个比较清晰的认识啊。无论是美国那边的观点以及中国这边的观点，其实打架都差不了太多。但是在这场竞争当中，谁更有胜出的赢面呢？我认为可能还是中国更有胜出的赢面，因为无论是我们的一个人才优势，我们的一个供应链优势，以及我们的一个劳动力的优势，我觉得在不同的层面上实际上都是碾压全世界的。好了，本期视频就到这里，感谢大家收看。